All right. So tonight is another story night. And we are going to be going into one chapter of Men and Dragons and then picking stuff from the list. Let's just take a look at the list real quick. I haven't looked at it in quite a while. Oh man. Oh man, maybe I do need to actually update this a little bit. Huh. Yeah, I've got a bunch of stories that have been pending for ages. Welp. Welp, welp, welp. Okay. Oh. You're already interested in that one, Dupless. Gotta pick the one with the human in the name. Didn't I have a particular criticism of that a while back? That was just like a lot of the humanity fuck yeah, or the HFY stuff is just, you know, humanity X or Humans X or something like that. Okay. However, we're not going to be starting with that. We will instead. You're not even expecting HFY out of these. Just about how humanity relates to itself, other than intelligences. Gotcha. That's a fun one. That's what I've heard. Also, I hope that NB enjoys the additional logs that Dupless just gave him. Oh wait, shit, that's gonna go to me, isn't it? Since I had to re-edit. Whatever. Hey NB. There you go. I figured you probably won't even know what to do with the extra logs. Indeed. Now, oh god, it's been ages since I... Right, okay, so Blackjack put Jack in a coma, and now Embrel and... So last we did this, Blackjack had put Jack in a coma, and Embrel and Shahar were doing all the work around the outpost, with an emphasis on just trying to follow as much of his plan. Also, Jack ended up having a possible interaction with the god of the Argun. Possible. We really don't know, and I don't think we ever have any particular way to know. I'm going to ask Blackjack about that at some point. So we are on chapter 32 now. Out of how many chapters again? I did say that Blackjack should probably include a table of contents at some point. Hold up. There's a cat. I hear a cat in the other room doing something, so we will be right back. I'm going to go and check. Make sure that he's not getting into something that he shouldn't be. We'll continue once I get back. Bart! Okay, well, Bart was indeed getting into something that he shouldn't have. Oh, hey, Hades Fate. I hope you're ready for some stories, because we apparently only have 3. I need to go and get some more permissions from authors, because I've been really bad about that lately. Just that I've got a lot of pending stories, and I have yet to find out if they are not pending. Oh, God. Dupless might be. I am not. I spent most of the day not being able to do much. So that was a whole thing. We doing some just chatting right now, and specifically doing some story reading. So we traditionally Hades. I don't remember if you've been here before during a story night, but we do one chapter of Blackjack's book of Men and Dragons, and then move on to something a bit shorter. So, yeah, let's get that done. Hope that changes for you. Yeah, feeling productive is kind of the problem right now. It's I ended up getting into work and then just discovered that work has been, I don't want to say sabotage because that was sabotage implies intent, but yeah, definitely not great. Hopefully it'll get better. I did end up finding something to do. Anyway, you ready for some stories? Who's ready for some stories? Everyone F up in chat for the dead nude at the end of this. As I try to strain my throat for all the Shahars. You know, initially I was like, oh no, Shahar and the Argoon aren't that bad. They've got a bit of a roughness that I'm trying to bring across that isn't awful. But over time, it definitely does build up. Anyway. Of Men and Dragons by Dr. Blackjack21, Chapter 32. Once again, Shahar was standing in the recently completed guard tower, looking out over the slowly expanding wall. For once, everything was going according to plan. At this rate, the palisade would be up well before spring. It was a simple design of mid-sized trunks placed firmly together to allow virtually no space between posts. The tops of the logs were sharpened to a point to make climbing them a little extra awkward. Additionally, a walkway was placed near the top of the wall along the inside. This gave potential guards a variety of vantage points, in addition to those offered by the towers that would be spaced every few hundred meters. Embril's well was also nearly complete. The hole had been dug, then lined with stones, and it maintained more than adequate water level at all times. It had a raised wall around the outside, and the top was capped off to prevent wildlife from falling inside and contaminating the water. She was working with both Fei-En and Telron She was working with both Fei-En and Telron to design a system for more easily lifting water out of the well, and then the usual bucket on a rope that people would haul up by hand. This well would use some sort of pulley system attached to a hand crank that apparently dramatically reduced the water bucket's weight, allowing for more water to be drawn up at a time. It was going to have 4 such systems lined up around the outside. Each of these were going to have a locking mechanism. When engaged, it would prevent the bucket from falling further than an eighth of the crank and allow the bucket to be locked at the top. The design was complicated enough that it took a few tries to explain to Telron and Fei-En what Embril was looking for. But now the two crafters were working together to make Embril's idea functional. There was a bit of trial and error. It took 2 days and a few scrapped parts to get one side up and running. However, now that the first draw system was in place, the workers were confident they could put the next 3 together in far less time than the first had taken. Meanwhile, Fei-En's little speech to Lonthal a few days ago had caused the youth to push himself further and faster when it came to bringing Embril's ideas to life. For the first time he could remember, hunting was a secondary priority. It would have if Embril didn't depend on him bringing home meat so she could cook up one of her... Excuse me. Well, it would have if Embril didn't depend on him bringing home meat so she could cook up one of her popular dishes. When he wasn't on the hunt, Lonthal was almost always found asking everyone else... Lonthal was almost always found asking what else he could help with. He threw himself into each task with a vigor that only abated when he was able to spend time talking with Embril. Not to be outdone, Telron's work was beginning to far outshine his years of experience. He crafted each tool or component as though they were his personal gift to Embril, and his dedication to his craft showed through in the results. Angela even commented that old Marcon will have to watch his back, or this young pup might surpass him. Now, one of the most significant issues slowing them down was getting enough lumber. Because of that, Shahar was out using the chainsaw almost daily to meet the workers' needs. The more she used the chainsaw, the easier it became, but she marveled at the fact that she still wasn't as productive as Jack had been. It was easy to look down on human beings being small and it was easy to look down on humans being small and weak, but there was something to humans that deserved a certain amount of respect. Hello, Elfta. How are you doing? Welcome to Story Night. We'll be getting to some of the shorter stories soon, so if you feel a little bit lost with this one, don't worry too much. We should get into something that everyone should enjoy. The thought of Jack brought a frown of concern to Shahar's face. He was showing signs of progress, but it seemed to be taking an agonizingly long time. The workers had all stopped asking about Jack, and Shahar had a distinct impression they just assumed he was dead. As far as the workers were concerned, she'd been running the camp longer than he had been. How would they react the day Jack woke up and took back over? Shahar shook her head. There were concerns for another time and place. Shahar shook her head. These were concerns for another time and place. For now, the woodworker whose turn it was to help gather wood had just walked up to the base of the tower and was now waiting on Shahar. She had more trees to cut to help supply the camp's needs, and she'd had plenty of time to worry about Jack tonight as she gave him her report on the day's project. Let me do that again. And she'd have plenty of time to worry about Jack tonight as she gave him her report on the day's project. Why do I want to keep saying project? It's progress. I mean, project could technically work. Blackjack, are you around? Hey, it's Bouncy Skoda. How you doing, Skoda? I see you over on the YouTube side. Unfortunately, the bot doesn't seem to work very well on the YouTube side. It's still there. It's just, it doesn't listen too well. I'm still working on that. At least we have a bot at all. You good mostly? And I see Elfta is also dandy, just drawing. Just doing some good draws. Any particular thing that you're drawing, Elfta? Also, we are now past the halfway point of this book. It's a good book. Graduated last weekend. Oh, nice. You got a ton more time then. Oh, yeah, it's the summer for you. Congrats. All right. Where was I? She had more trees to cut to help supply the camp's needs, and she'd have plenty of time to worry about Jack tonight as she gave her report on the day's progress. It was always painful to look at Jack's unmoving face as she spoke to him at night, but there was something oddly comforting about holding his hand and feeling his warmth radiating into her own as she spoke. As long as the warmth flowed, Jack lived, and that was good enough for Shahar, for now. After that, Shahar would settle down in the bedroll she'd made on the ground beside Jack's bed. If Jack woke up in the middle of the night, his bodyguard was going to be there and ready to help in any way he needed. Emerald also took her turns talking to Jack, though her conversations were more often centered about whatever problems she was dealing with. The subjects would range from logistical issues about her designs from the camps to the emotional problems weighing her down at the time. She'd told Shahar that imagining what Jack might say in response to her issues often led Emerald to conclusions she might never have come to on her own. Welcome back. What you up to, Bouncy Skoda? Shahar couldn't understand that. Or, no, Shahar could understand that. It had been weeks, but she could still sometimes hear Jack's quips in the silent moments of a conversation. Even now, she could imagine that stupid grin he'd have on his face before saying something to get a reaction out of her. It had taken her a while to realize he enjoyed pushing her to the point she'd give him a light smack in response to some smart remark. He said it meant he'd won. He said it meant he'd won that round of verbal sparring, whatever that meant. Her frown now replaced with a smile of her own. Shahar jerked her head towards the forest just past the wall as she spoke to the woodworker. "Let's get to work." Not really much, just watching me and listening to music with a friend. Oh, nice. You are really music-oriented, aren't you, Skoda? Do you do music yourself? I think you said you were in band, right? Embro was cooking a large pot of stew in the workers' billet. This batch of smoked meat was a bit on the tough side and needed a little extra attention to make it palatable. She'd mixed in a few roots and tubers that Lonthal had gathered for her during his hunting forays into the forest. While she worked, Angela played a little tune over her headband, and Embro was dancing in place while humming to herself as she chopped up the ingredients. Embro never heard Shahar and the woodworkers enter and continued to hum and dance until a sneeze from behind her made her freeze. Embro stayed utterly motionless for a few moments, hoping the sound had just been some weird trick of the wind finding a crack in the doorframe. But she knew she was deluding herself. She turned around extra slowly, hoping not to draw attention to herself as she did so, but found her efforts in vain as two pairs of eyes were now staring at her. The eyes were accompanied by a couple of grinning faces that were obviously enjoying the show at Embro's expense. Embro glared at the pair that were currently shedding sawdust with every movement. "Look at you two." Oh, sorry. That's not Embro's voice. "Look at you two. You're filthy. Go outside and dust yourself up before you ruin my stew." Shahar's grin only grew a little wider in response. "Ah, don't get so mad." No, that's definitely not Shahar's voice. Hold up. Oh God, it's been a while. "Ah, don't get so mad." No, that's still not right. Give me a moment. I got to do a couple of attempts. It has been a while. Don't get so mad because we caught your cute little show. Besides, aren't I the one in charge of the camp at the moment? Who gave you the authority to order me out of here? Embro bared her teeth and shook her tendrils in a half-joking threat display before speaking. "I'm the cook, and if you want this delicious stew for dinner, rather than some stale bread and water, you'll do as I say. Now go clean yourselves off before coming back into my kitchen." The worker, Jankul, if Rumble remembered correctly, looked back and forth between the two women, wondering just how much trouble he would get in merely by being present to witness such a spectacle. The usually shy and docile Embro was now advancing on the nearly unflappable Shahar with a wooden spoon, and Shahar was backing down. Both hands held up as the No? Okay. Both hands were held up as the unstoppable Shahar surrendered to the tiny Embro. Okay, you win. I'll go dust off. Just put away the spoon." As Shahar walked out the door, Jankul could hear Shahar mutter to herself, "I have this whole bloody camp dropped in my lap, and I run the thing without any complaint, but do I get any respect? No. Instead, I get chased away from dinner by a wooden spoon and the threat of stale bread." Her tone seemed to be at least half-joking, but he wasn't sure. Jankul was now doing his best to not attract attention by remaining completely motionless. Sadly, it didn't work. Embril's gaze slowly shifted to him before she broke out the cutest grin he'd ever seen. Sorry about that. I hope you didn't... I hope we didn't scare you too much. I thought I would appreciate it if you'd go dust off too. Oh, no, that's also not right. Though I would appreciate it if you'd go dust off also. There we go. You're here to vibe, not judge. Indeed. He just gawked in wonder at the strange little woman who had gone from terrifying warrior of legend to a cute little girl just barely over his daughter's age in the blink of an eye. It took his brain a moment to catch up with the shift, but once he did, he relaxed as he responded to the now impossibly cute... He relaxed as he responded to the now impossibly cute eyes innocently looking up at him. Yeah, no problem. I'll be right back. As soon as he walked out and the door shut, Embril could hear the laughter shared between Shahar and Janko. The diminutive chef reluctantly went back to her cooking. As she worked, she spoke in an exasperated voice to Angela. Why didn't you warn me people were coming in? They caught me dancing. Angela's voice sounded a little too innocent as she responded. Would you believe I got too caught up in the music and dancing and didn't notice? Embril was a little overenthusiastic as she started pasting the root she would add to the stew to thicken the mixture. She splattered the wall and herself liberally as she worked. She splattered the wall and herself liberally as she worked out her embarrassment. No, I don't believe that. You are far too aware of our surroundings to miss a little thing like that, especially since I know you happen to be riding along with Shahar in her headset as well. Angela's voice took on an apologetic tone. Okay. How about you looked so cute, hold me closer, tiny dancer. Who is it that I knew that was in band? Someone was very music-oriented here. I don't remember now. Okay, how about you looked so cute doing your little dance I had to share it with someone. That much cuteness was not meant for one AI alone. Embril grumped at the AI while she worked. Well, next time, give me a warning, or else I'll... Angela's voice was now confident of victory. Or you'll what? You can't threaten me with a spoon or stale bread the way you did with Shahar. It was apparent that Angela thought she was untouchable. Embril huffed indignantly before pulling out the most dire threat she could think of. Or else I'll turn... Or else I'll learn to control my excitement like a proper lady, instead of joining you by hopping up and down in celebration. Angela was quiet a moment before her defeated voice responded. You win, on the provision that you never use such a diabolically evil threat on me again. That just wasn't fair. Embril's voice was considerably brighter, now that she had gotten one up on the offending parties in the little debacle that shall never be spoken of again. As she started chopping up the root to go in the pot, Embril was back to humming and swaying her hips as she worked. Shahar was holding Jack's hand and speaking with laughter in her voice. And then she threatened me with a spoon. A stupid wooden spoon. The look on Janko's face was priceless. Shahar had to close her eyes and shake her head for a moment at the memory. Then she opened her eyes again. It took her a moment to realize that Jack's eyes were open as well, and he was looking right at her. Shahar leapt forward, pulling Jack into a crushing embrace. Tears were flowing freely as she babbled, You're awake! You've come back to us! Angela! Embril! Come quick! Jack's awake! Shahar heard the thunder of Embril's approaching footsteps and saw the glow of Angela's avatar, but her world was focused entirely on Jack. She studied Jack's face intently and realized very quickly something was wrong. Aside from his face, Jack's expression was altogether unchanged. Even those looked a bit wrong, as though they were looking toward her, but not at her. She gripped her hand tightly as she begged, Please, Jack, say something, anything. Speak to me. Embril had burst into the room, ready to tackle Jack, but she stopped short when she heard the desperation in Shahar's voice. Jack's eyes were unfocused. The entire room held its breath after Shahar's plea. Shahar was just giving in to tears, born of the kind of devastation brought on by crushed hope, when Jack's voice pierced the silence of the house for the first time in weeks. His voice was cracked, halting, and barely above a whisper, but everyone was so silent and attentive that all three women heard him as clear as day. This mountain is so tall. Jack paused and took a deep breath before continuing a moment later. And the wind is so cold. Following that, Jack's eyes closed again, and what little strain he seemed to be putting on his body seemed to ease out of him as he fell back into his relaxed pose. Jack was asleep once more. Shahar turned her tear-stained face towards Angela. What does that mean? Oh, sorry. What was that? What does it mean? Angela couldn't keep the emotion from her voice, despite nearly overheating a few processors in her attempt to do so. It means there's real hope now. It means he's finally making real progress. Jack looked at the mountain currently standing before him. The wind coming off it was so cold, it stung his face, and he could already feel his fingers ache The wind coming off it was so cold, it stung his face, and he could already feel his fingers ache in anticipation of what lay ahead. The road he had been following disappeared into the mountain, and he could hear Shahar's voice coming from above the peak. This is going to suck. I've never been particularly interested in rock climbing or heights. Jack cracked his knuckles, stretched his neck, rotated his arms in their sockets, and, failing to think of anything else he could do to psych himself up, not that any of those actually worked, he grabbed hold of his first handful of rock and pulled himself up, grumbling under his breath the whole time. Come on, Jack. You fly spaceships in space. You're not going to let a little thing like a fear of heights stop you now, are you? He'd made it up about 10 feet before looking down. His vision spun for a moment, and he pulled himself tight against the rock he was holding on to with very white knuckles. He usually wasn't this bad until at least 3 or 4 stories off the ground. Angela had to handle most takeoffs or landings for this reason. But something about a perilous handhold on an untested rock, Let's try that again. But something about a perilous handhold on an untested rock wall made everything worse. Finally, he forced his muscles to relax, and he reached up to the next handhold he could find. This is going to be a long climb. Angela was finishing her explanation. So, as he starts coming out of his coma, he'll wake up like he just did more often. Eventually, he may even seem to fully wake up before slipping back into the coma, but that's all normal. Emerald was hugging Shahar. She was bawling her eyes out, but they were happy tears. Even if he hadn't made any sense, Jack had spoken again. The younger girl had almost given up on ever hearing Jack's voice again. But now her hope was renewed and burning brightly. At this moment, she felt like she could fly. It took a moment for Shahar and Emerald to realize that Angela was standing very quietly. The small celebration in front of her seemed forgotten, as she tilted her head to one side as though listening to something. When she spoke, the worry was evident in her face. Shahar, go and warn the workers. We've got a cold front moving in. It's going to be far colder than anything I've seen on this planet before now. A bit of a reminder, the workers are cold-blooded, so cold is significantly worse for them than humans. All right. I hope everyone enjoyed that. Let's go ahead and roll for our next story. I'm pretty sure I already know what it is because we only have one. Oh, right. Hold up. So, oh, did someone select something else? So our next story is called Gestation Upside Down. Oh God, hold up. Oh, it's by Gas Station Jack. Wait. It's a gas station story. So not gestation, it's gas station. Someone definitely did a whoopsie on the name. I was like, why does this have the best series 2017? Okay. So for those who haven't seen the gas station, like the Tales from the Gas Station series, they are largely standalone. They do have some level of continuity, but they are fantastic little short stories that all fold together into something a bit longer. Thank God you thought I was gonna have body horror. I wouldn't rule that out yet. This is from r/no sleep, which is r/no sleep is a series of horror stories. So yeah, we'll see. Although generally the gas station stuff tends to be more along the lines of Welcome to Night Vale. If you've heard of that. Anyway, shall we get started? Upside Down by Gas Station Jack. I learned something pretty interesting today. Apparently, hanging upside down for too long can be fatal. I won't go into everything that led to this moment of discovery, because most of it isn't important. But believe me when I say it was weird and stupid and involved thousands of leeches. We were suspended by rusty chains wrapped tightly around our bottom halves, some 10 or so feet off the floor of a mysterious underground building that had somehow gone unnoticed for decades in the forest next to the gas station where I work. It was cold and damp, and our only light source was the trio of burn barrels organized in a triangle around us. And I'm pretty sure this placement wasn't ventilating all the smoke properly. I was annoyed, but at least I had my coworker Jerry there, hanging next to me, volunteering as a distraction for the situation at hand. To pass the time, he showed off his impressive repertoire of show tunes and told awful dad jokes, despite my repeated requests for him to stop. Around the 2 or 3 hour mark, our captor came back to check and see how we were doing. Or maybe he was there to taunt us. I don't really know. His motivations were unclear. At first, when I heard the metal door scrape open, I was relieved we were finally getting this show on the road. I don't want to sound ungrateful, but there's only so many times I can hear Jerry ask if his joke is gone. Oh. I don't want to sound ungrateful, but there's only so many times I can hear Jerry ask if his joke had gone under my head. He walked into the room slowly, one deliberate step after the other, and I'm sure he had some theme music playing in his mind and probably thought he looked way cooler than it actually did. He was wearing cargo pants, a black leather jacket, and an apron spattered with blood. In one hand, he held a machete. In the other, an oversized hook. And on his face, he wore the stupidest mask I had ever seen, like some kind of nightmare Bugs Bunny with black fur, sharpened buck teeth, and pointy elongated ears that scraped the top of the doorframe as he entered. I've seen this mask! I've seen this mask. Oh, man, that's great. He pointed the machete right at me and said something in an intimidating yet muffled voice. What? I asked. He repeated himself, now slightly more annoyed, but still as equally muffled. What's he saying? Asked Jerry. I have no idea, I answered. The man in the mask made a muffled scream and shook his weapon at us. Dude, just take your mask off, Jerry said, interrupting the muffle. Yeah, we know that's you, Beau. We're not idiots. You smell like Axe body spray, and you've been casing the gas station for a week now. His name was Beau... Oh, God. Oh, fantastic. There's a pronunciation guide. Kovia. Okay. Kuvia. His name was Beau Kuvia. For those who aren't familiar with the Deep South, it's pronounced Beau Kuvia. And he had been a huge jerk for as long as we had known him. We met back in elementary school and established on day one that we weren't ever going to be friends. He wasn't the first person I'd have expected to resort to kidnapping and torture, but I wasn't all that surprised by this development either. It would be generous for me to say that Beau was a product of his upbringing. Sure, he came from a stupid, angry family in a stupid, angry town, and one might be tempted to say that he never had much of a chance of breaking the cycle. But I feel like maybe that's letting Beau off the hook too easily. My memories of Beau growing up mostly revolve around attempts to avoid him in gym class, and out of gym class, and everywhere. In 10th grade, Beau had a brief stint of popularity after the school board refused his grant request for $5,000 to sponsor a high school clan club, a student organization intended to celebrate Anglo-Saxon heritage by driving four-wheelers around in the mud. He and his father, well, mostly his father, sued on the basis of racial discrimination and settled out of court for an undisclosed sum. After that, he started shopping for clothing exclusively at Hot Topic and wearing his ginger orange hair in spikes like a 90s punk rocker. Then he printed off a bunch of copies of the Anarchist Cookbook from the computer lab, started selling cigarettes in the school parking lot, spray painted a bunch of swastikas in the English teacher's car, and eventually made a name for himself as the edgy, too cool for school kid. Oh, this sounds like a fantastic character. When we first noticed Beau hanging around the gas station, I assumed he was planning on robbing us. He was never anything even remotely clever, but the level of suspicious he was behaving was on the verge of comical. Wearing a hat and trench coat, parking his truck at the edge of the lot, squinting to see if we had any security cameras anywhere in the building. Coming in twice a day and never buying anything. Then, last Friday, he tried to talk up the female cashier while they were alone. I'm sure he thought he was being seductive, but that's the power of self-delusion for you. Rosa told me all about it after I came in to take over the safe. He asked me if we had any hidden weapons in the store, because if I needed it, he was more than happy to stick around and offer me his protection. Well, I said, that's pretty obvious, isn't it? Did he open with that? He started by being super creepy and asking me about where I was from, how long I worked here, yada yada. Then he asked if I was alone. Why would he think that was okay to ask? What did you tell him? I lied and said you, Jerry, and Mac were in the back room rotating inventory. Who's Mac? He's a guy I made up to tell Beau. Mac is an ex-Marine with impulse control problems. He's just trying to do right by his ex-wife ever since they made him out of the slammer. Oh, sorry, that was a mistake. He's just trying to do right by his ex-wife ever since they let him out of the slammer, where he did his time for a crime he didn't commit. All he wants is to be part of his kids' lives and make some extra cash here at the gas station while he takes night classes to get his MBA. But an old acquaintance from his days in the service came back into his life suddenly and unexpectedly, pulling Mac down a dark rabbit hole that will challenge everything he stands for. Will Mac make the right call? Find out in Mac the Knife. Anyway, I think we need to call Deputy O'Brien. She has a talent That sounds suspiciously like a couple of books that I've read. There's not really much she can do until he actually breaks a law. We can put a gun under the counter. Do you have any idea how ridiculous it is that we don't keep a stash of weapons here at the gas station? I'll think about it. I did think about it. I really did. And I even came to the conclusion that Rosa was right. We should start arming ourselves, just in case. But then I got lazy and started reading a book. And then I forgot about it. And then last night I came in to take over for Jerry and start my overnight shift, and he wasn't there. Instead of Jerry, I found this fat dummy holding a machete and a gun, wearing his silly rabbit mask and forcing me into the back cab of his truck. Then he drove me out into the woods, down an old dirt road to a giant metal bunker door, and walked me inside, down a concrete hallway coated in dirt and graffiti, past rooms half flooded with stagnant rainwater, past giant metal silos and crumbling columns and and metal beams. Let me do that again. Past giant metal silos and crumbling columns and metal beams, and finally into this huge empty room where he tied me up with chains and hoisted me to the ceiling next to Jerry. And that's how we got here. Between knock-knock jokes and Jerry's terrible a cappella renditions of Broadway hits, we wondered out loud what Beau's endgame was. The room he had placed us in contained a giant pentagram freshly painted on one wall with a ladder, brush, and an open can from Sherwin-Williams sitting next to it. After that, I surmised that all the blood on Beau's apron was actually just paint. The best theory we could come up with was that he'd gone off the deep end and was planning to sacrifice us to the devil. Turns out, our theory wasn't that far off. Beau finally took off the mask, revealing the look of annoyance on his chubby, round face. I'm sorry, the words just kind of blended together there. You're late but here? You were out getting some late night ice cream? You need to read more of this guy's stories, apparently. What? Gas Station Jack? Yeah, Gas Station Jack's great. If you are at all interested in his stuff, he has a couple of audiobooks that you can probably get on Audible. They are read by, not me, but they are read by Mr. Creepypasta, I believe the name was, which seems things. I've never heard him, so I can't recommend, but yeah. Hashtag sponsored. I'll let him know. You can't do audiobooks? Oh. Just not any convenient times to listen to them? Where was I? You shitsticks don't even know what kind of hurt you're in for, do you? A moment passed, then I said, Oh, wait, were you waiting for an answer? Sorry, I thought you were being rhetorical. You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, you know what? You aren't. Wow, clever. Come on, Beau, I said. Just let us down from here. We can pretend this whole thing never happened. No, we won't, interjected Jerry. As soon as you let us go, I swear I'm headed straight to the sheriff's station to hand your ass in, and there's nothing you can do to stop me or change my mind. I cut my eyes at him and muttered a quiet, Shut up. Something must have clicked in his head, because Jerry started to backtrack. Oh, yeah, you're right. Never mind, Beau. I forgive you. Now let us go, or else. Beau let out a forced laugh that didn't sound even remotely convincing, then said, You're staying here for the rest of eternity. This is where you'll die. Did you know that the Chinese use death from hanging upside down as their most feared form of torture? Again, I caught myself waiting for him to continue, only to realize he was asking us a question. No, I didn't. Let me explain to you the different stages of pain you will go through before your death. First, You will feel your lungs slowly being crushed under the weight of your other organs, until the very act of breathing becomes nearly impossible. Then your heart will overload from the extra work of pumping blood all the way to your toes and back. Then the vessels in your eyes will rupture. You will go permanently blind as you struggle for each breath. And then, after you're finally dead, that will bleed you dry and leave your bodies down here to rot. I'm not a doctor, but none of that sounded right. However, I wasn't about to tell Bo that he needed to up his torture game. "Hey!" Bo yelled, pointing his machete at the guy hanging excuse me. "Hey!" Bo yelled, pointing his machete at the guy hanging on the other side of Jerry. "What's going on with that one?" By that one, he was referring to Mel, the new part-timer that Jerry had been training when Bo came back in earlier to kidnap him. It was only his first day, and the poor guy was already in a secret underground torture chamber. Jerry answered, "Yeah, he passed out right off the bat. We've been trying to wake him up, but he is lights out hard. Hey, Mel! Mel, wake up! You're missing the villain monologue." Jerry swung an arm at Mel, but we were all suspended just out of reach from one another. "Is that guy dead already?" asked Bo. I studied Mel for a moment, but couldn't see any breathing or other signs of life. "Yeah," I answered, sadly. Let me try that again. "Yeah," I answered sadly. "I think he is." "Wow," Bo said with a strange smile. "I did it. I took my first life. Now I know how it feels. This power, it's amazing. It's something like you pathetic sheep are never going to feel. You'll never know the power of snuffing out another person's very existence." Jerry chuckled and said, "Okay, dude." "Oh, this is it. I have everything I need. Do you idiots want to guess what's about to happen next?" "No," we both answered at the same time. "Now I have what I need to summon forth the beast." I don't even know how to pronounce that. I'm going to give it a shot, but... Sayergen? Kyergen? I'm going to guess. Now I know. Now I have what I need to summon forth the beast, Kyergen. He is an eternal being from another world, stronger than you can even fathom. I've given him everything he needs to enter our realm, except for the final ingredient, the blood of a man in tortured anguish. Bo went to the corner where the chains were all connected to an old crank device and turned the wheel until Mel's body was lowered all the way to the floor. Then he unhooked Mel's chain, listened for a heartbeat. Really, he should have done those two in opposite order, and dragged Mel across the floor to the spot in front of the pentagram. "Hey, dude," Jerry whispered to me. "When we get out of this, I think we should seriously reconsider buying a shotgun or something for the store." Bo got down on his knees and fished a large pocket knife out of his cargo pants, flicked it open, and kissed it. "You losers are about to see something you're not even worthy to behold. The gates of hell will open, and you will literally be in the presence of the Dark Lord Kyergen. Tell me, have either of you ever seen an actual god before?" "Yes," we said in unison. "They have." That's not a joke. They actually have. I looked over at Jerry. "Wait, really? When did you see a god?" "It was back when you were in the hospital for a few days getting your leg taken care of. There was this bat god named Plabu or something. He was trapped in a small universe thing inside a bottle of Strega liquor. Of course, I was on a lot of mushrooms at the time, so I might have imagined it all. What about you?" I answered, "Remember that time we were all escaping the zombie nudists in the underground cavern, and we got separated by those giant hands that burst out of the walls? Yeah, I got sucked into this throne room with a dark tree god. He turned out to be a pretty cool He turned out to be pretty cool Yeah. Other people listen at work, but you work on a repair shop and it's too loud to pay attention. Ah, gotcha. Where was I? Remember that time we were all escaping the zombie nudists in the underground cavern and we got separated by those giant hands that burst out of the walls? Yeah, I got sucked into this throne room of a dark tree god. He turned out to be pretty cool, though. Of course, I was on a lot of painkillers at the time, so I might have imagined it all. Our lives are pretty weird, Jerry responded. Hey, Bo yelled. I'm being serious here. This is real. And you're about to see for yourselves. Watch. With 2 hands around the hilt, he plunged the knife into Mel's chest. Mel's eyes shot open, and he screamed and bolted to his feet. It worked, Jerry yelled. Mel is a zombie. Mel screamed again and looked at the weapon sticking out of his chest. Mel, go get help, I yelled. Bo struggled to get his fat ass to his feet, but Mel turned around, punched him in the face, and darted out the door down the hallway. Get back here, Bo screamed as he threw his hook after the escaping victim. It clanged against the wall several feet from the door and fell to the ground, and Bo huffed and ran after him. A few minutes later, Bo came back to the room with his head hung low, his eyes red and watery, and snotty blood flowing messily from his nostrils. It looked like this punch might have left Bo with a broken nose, and, as pathetic as he looked, I couldn't possibly feel sorry for him. This is all your faults, he growled at us. How do you figure? Asked Jerry. You lied to me. You tricked me into believing Mel was actually dead. Jerry snapped his fingers and said, Bitch, get off this persecution complex. You're the one that brought us down here to torture us to death. You don't get to cry over how we weren't nice to you. I'm gonna kill you, Bo hollered. Side note, when did Jerry get this badass? Yeah, so you said, Jerry taunted back. Bo wiped his bloody nose off his sleeve. Bo wiped his bloody nose off his sleeve and flung it onto the ground, and then screamed again. You have no idea how powerful I'm going to be. You're going to learn your place. You're all going to respect me. And when I'm done, He stopped mid-sentence and his face went pale. Then he turned and looked at his bloody spatter on the floor, then at the pentagram on the wall. What? He stammered to nobody in particular. Jerry gave me a look that said, This dude is 4 equal sides short of a square. Jerry's badassery comes and goes depending on the substances he's consumed recently. That sounds a lot like Jerry. Oh, yeah, of course. He was speaking to the wall. So, you want to let us down now, or what? Bo looked at me with a giant ugly smile and asked, Do you guys hear that too? Hear what? I responded. The voice? He's right there. Bo pointed at the pentagram. He can hear me, and he's telling me that I've done well. The blood is good. My blood. He just needs more. Of course, all he needs to come forth is for me to make the ultimate sacrifice. Bo picked up the machete with his right hand and held it to his left wrist, then closed his eyes and took a deep breath. This is it. This is why he chose me to summon Kyrgyz. Because he knew when the time came, I would have the strength to do what's necessary. Who chose you for what? I asked. I'm lost. Yeah, Jerry said. Me too. I really wasn't paying attention. Was Mel a zombie or what? Bo opened his eyes, forced another fake laugh, and said, There's a man in town. I never got his name, but I didn't have to. He found me. He offered me a job. He gave me a purpose. And now I'm part of something greater than myself. All he asked is that I summon Kyrgyz into the world. It's all part of the great plan. And soon it will be finished. It is an honor to be able to give my life to Kyrgyz. It is an honor to be able to give my life so Kyrgyz can rise. He closed his eyes and lifted the machete, then slowly put it back against his skin. Then we waited for 30 seconds. Eventually, Jerry's voice crept into the silence in his best Emperor Palpatine voice. Yes, that's it. Do it. Let the darkness be your strength. Let the anger guide you. Let the hate flow through you. Dude, I said, quit it. You're going to mess him up. Bo threw the weapon to the ground and screamed at us again. You bitches have no idea what it's like. How hard I had to struggle. I've gone my entire life putting up with shit stains like you two trying to keep me down, and I'm sick and tired of it. Soon Kyrgen will come, and all the people that make life worse, all you people, will get exactly what you deserve. I had actually forgotten that he still had a gun until this moment, when he pulled it out of the waistband of his cargo pants and said, "This is what real strength looks like," and put it in his mouth. I closed my eyes and braced for the noise. This was going to be super gross, and I really didn't care to watch. After a few seconds, he still hadn't pulled the trigger, and I opened one eye to see that he was frozen there with a gun still in his mouth. "Hey man, I have an idea," Jerry said. "You're clearly having trouble riding that struggle bus over there. Why don't you let me down from here, give me the gun, and let me kill you?" "Yeah, right? Sound good? You want to die, I want to kill you. It's a win-win." Bo pulled the gun out of his mouth to the sound of a wet plop and spat on the ground. "You don't have what it takes to kill somebody." "No, really. I've totally got a hard-on for homicide. Just ask Jack." "It's true," I said. "Before he worked at the gas station, Jerry was the only surviving member of a murder cult. He's not lying, by the way." Bo walked angrily over to the crank wheel and started lowering Jerry to the ground. Holy shit, is this actually working? Bo took the chains off Jerry, tossed the gun next to him, then held the machete like a baseball bat right underneath me and said, "Okay, asshole, here's the deal. You can't back out now. If you don't spill my blood and open the portal, I'm going to kill your friend and..." Bang. Jerry didn't hesitate 1 second to shoot. Bo screamed and flopped to the ground, hugging the foot with the fresh bullet hole. Then Jerry fished his pack of smokes out of his pocket, lit one up, and took a puff. "Hey, dude," I said, "you want to let me down from here now?" But before he could answer, the fire from the burn barrels started flaring up, roaring and growing. Before we knew what was happening, they had formed giant cyclones of burning red and blue, blazing swirls that climbed to the ceiling. As the heat from the fires swept over me, I saw a crystallic. Never seen that word before. As the heat from the fires swept over me, I saw a crystallic sparkling light in the center of the pentagram grow from the size of a pinprick to an enormous swirling vortex of pure shimmering lights. "Well, check that out," Jerry said. Bo started frantically laughing, and I think he was just about to give us a smug, "I told you so." But before he could, an enormous skeletal hand reached out from the void and grabbed him around the waist. I can't describe exactly what the hand looked like, because I don't think I can't describe exactly what the hand looked like, because I don't think the entity belonged to... I can't describe exactly what the hand looked like, because I don't think the entity it belonged to was part of our world or understanding of physics. It was, at the exact same time, the size of a normal human arm and the size of Manhattan Island. It was a color that had never existed. It had 5 fingers, and each fingertip split into 5 more fingers, which each broke into 5 fingers, which broke into 5 more fingers ad infinitum. I could somehow hear the creature's arm moving with my eyes, and the smell of its flesh was very similar to gumdrops. Jerry later insisted that it smelled like spiced rum. Bo let out a gasp as the infinite fingers squeezed around him. Then the arm dragged him slowly through the swirling void. "Holy shit!" Jerry yelled. "That asshole had my wallet!" "Jerry!" I yelled to get his attention. Then he looked back at me. When he looked back at me, I pointed at the spot on the ground where dumbass Bo's foot blood had started to pool. "You have to figure out a way to close the portal." Jerry put his lit cigarette between his lips, unzipped his fly, and started pissing into the puddle of blood. And amazingly, that worked. A noise like the crack of thunder filled the room, and the portal disappeared, along with all of our light as the fires from the burn barrels immediately extinguished themselves. In the darkness, all I could hear was the sound of Jerry pissing on the floor. After a while, he finished up and said, "Wow, that's a relief. Man, I gotta tell you, I've been holding it ever since he kidnapped us. You gonna let me down, or Sorry, I'm on it. It took about 10 minutes for him to find the wheel in the dark and lower me to the ground. By the time we got the chains off, we could hear sirens growing louder in the distance. Deputy O'Brien took our statements, then balled them up and threw them away and told us to try again. Our second version of events left out the part where an evil being reached out into our world to grab Bo and drag him to a hell dimension. She informed us that the building was some kind of satellite power plant from the 50s. The place was shut down and demolished, but they forgot about the basement level, and after a few years, nature reclaimed it. From the look of things, Bo had been living out there by himself. Officially, he was a lone gunman, a single maniac, and with him gone, we had nothing to worry about. Unofficially, we're all a little on edge about who hired him to summon a demon. Maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't. Either way, we need to find somebody to replace Mel, because something tells me he isn't coming back to work anytime soon. In other news, I just learned the carnival is coming to town soon, so that's pretty exciting. Good stuff. Good stuff indeed. Whew. So let's see, we're down to like 2 stories, I think, right now. What time is it? It's 8:16. We can probably do one more before I wrap up for tonight. Merry Christmas from the... Oh, that's interesting. Oh, right. I'm sorry. I completely forgot that if there's something that someone selects, it actually just rolls it eventually. Yep. No, it got selected earlier and I forgot about it. Interesting. So it did get rolled, but for some strange reason, that's okay. We still have it in the files. What was it called? That's a bug, probably. Let me check why that happened. Oh, hey, Dupless, if you're still around, Legend of Mana just started decaying. Thank you. Cool. I'm just checking the stories thing because it should have rolled it and it should have actually popped up when it did roll. But for some reason it didn't, and I'm not sure why. Yeah, that's interesting. It did actually end up rolling it. Oh, I'm sorry, Envy. Hold up. One moment. You were the one that submitted that one, right? Good job. You found something that someone else was interested in. Okay. Humans' innate ability. So funny story about this particular one because I'm going to message the author. I have no idea if they're ever going to get back to me, but Tater Tot Thief was one that I messaged on September 11th of 2021. And they finally got back to me on April 29th. And they were like, yeah, sure, you can do that, which is hilarious. So I'm finally getting to this. Okay. Now then, Human's Innate Ability by Tater Tot Thief. I'm telling you, Kex, if you want the most amount of destruction possible, talk to a human. That line. Hold up. NB, have I read this one before? You tell me, right? Yeah, whatever. If I did, then it was probably so far back that I wasn't asking for permission, and I am asking for permission now. So that makes a difference. I'm telling you, Kex, if you want the most amount of destruction possible, talk to a human. The dragon slowly turned his 4 eyes towards the Uxlan. Not an easy feat when you have little to no neck, and blinked slowly. The Uxlan were a curious species, humans describing them as a 1.5 meter tall, overgrown porcupine with metal spikes and no concept of personal space. Having developed on a planet with no natural predators and relatively peaceful conditions, Kex wondered if it was because they simply didn't have much experience with danger. Kex's train of thought brought him to the human's description of his own species. 2 meters tall, with the head of a rhino beetle and the body of a shark with webbed legs and hands. Do not touch their rebreather. A mistake on both species parts when a human, surprisingly even more curious than the Uxlan, touched one of the apparatuses and was thrown against the bulkhead of the ship. It was a tense period of time from what he'd heard. I find that hard to believe, Vurux. I have met with the human, Daniel. The rebreather's built-in translator having difficulty with the human's name. And I do not think he is capable of destruction like we are. You would think, with their weak bodies and no natural weapons. But listen, I have talked with a few, and every time I meet one I always ask, how would you cause the most amount of destruction at this moment? Their answers scare me. Kex studied his counterpart, watching as the shivers down the Uxlan's back made her spikes move akin to the waves on his homeworld. Then how would you cause the most damage? Vux seemed surprised at the dragon's question. I don't know. I haven't given it much thought. I suppose I would raid Security's armory and take the captain hostage. What about you? Kex looked back at his screen and thought for a moment. I would destroy the FTL's controls and use an escape shuttle to land myself planet-side. As the universe would have it, the human Daniel... As the universe would have it, the human Daniel walked... Give me a moment. As the universe would have it, the human Daniel walked past the engineering doors at the moment and found himself in the vision of Vux. Ah, what great timing! Daniel, could you come answer a question of mine? Daniel looked over to the two and shrugged. What's up? Vux looked up above her and looked back to the human. I think this... Oh, I see what Vux is going on about. Vux looked up above her and looked back to the human. I think it's the birthing area. Why do you ask? It's an expression. Never mind. What's your question? How would you cause the most amount of destruction at this moment? The human looked surprised. The human's look of surprise. No, that's not right either. Okay, there's a missing D. I see. The human looked surprised and then put his hand over his chin. I guess I would override the command center from here, spool up the FTL drive, point it at an Arius moon, lock everyone out, and take a shuttle out. Why do you ask? Both looked at the human with shock, the Uxlan having puffed up and the dragon's widening of his eyes. That would destabilize the moon's orbit. It would crash into Aria itself. It would wipe out the entire planet. Who would even think of doing such a thing? The human held up both hands in front of The human held up both hands in front as if to... The human held up both hands in front as if that could help the onslaught of shouting that had just erupted from both of them. Hey, you asked me how. I would do it, of course. Or, I would never do it, of course. Now, if you would excuse me, I have some maintenance to do. I'll talk to you two later. Both watched as the human walked away. Hey, Kex. Yes? Do you want to put the... Oh, this is the giant porcupine. Hey, Kex. Yes. Do you want to put the work order in to remove the command override, or should I? I'll get to it right now. Good stuff. Yeah, I think I did read that a while back. Okay. So, yeah, I will just go ahead and wrap up here. I could do the last gas station one, but I figure we might as well save that until Christmas because it's a Merry Christmas one. But I'll try and find other things to read. Anyway. I hope everyone enjoyed Story Night. I am going to have to start reaching out to some more authors because I've got a backlog of stuff to read myself. And until next time. Oh yeah, also Patreon supporters. I should probably go over that. Thank you to my Patreon supporters, Tenace Games, Zebgrin, Slime Hunter, Walks with Gorillas, my dad, Kremlin Kev, Desalona, Miss Mango Plays, NBFF, Alpha Mango, Kawok, Veritanium, Molly Copper, and Paper Duplas for continuing to support the streams. Also, thank you to my author supporters, Dr. Blackjack21, Gas Station Jack, Galgamos, Mercury the Dealer, Slightly Assholic, Kaiser5243, and Tendy Trucks 35 for allowing me to read their content on stream. I need to catch up with a lot of the stuff that Slightly Assholic has been writing, so we will probably try and do that next stream. So that's going to be in for a fun, very goofy story. For those who don't know, Slightly Assholic's ongoing story, The Adventures, or The Great Erectus and Fawn, follows two entities as they go on hilarious journeys throughout the multiverse. Anyway, until next time, have a safe trip through the dark forest, and I will send you all off. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around. You know what? Let's go ahead and raid Kegel, who's doing some mechs. Good mechs. All right. Good night, everyone.